Welcome to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast series with U.S. Navy Special Operations veteran, CEO, and hockey fanatic Bob Pizzini. Bob discusses leadership, success, failure, defining moments, and hard lessons learned with guests who are intentional in their approach to leadership. Leadership is a perishable skill. Use it or lose it. In this series, entrepreneurs, industry executives, academics, public figures, and other highly effective professionals share their formulas for success with you.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Elevate Your Leadership podcast with me, your host, Bob Pizzini. If you've listened to previous versions of this podcast, which I hope you have, you know that I like to have discussions with people who not only bring great value to me and my organization, but these are people who I know will bring great value to you and your organization. My guest today is Dustin Baker, president of BioProtein technology and the visionary behind Biopro Plus, a revolutionary non-synthetic growth factor formula that's making waves in the world of health and fitness. Dustin's expertise spans a crucial intersection that deeply resonates with the needs of veterans, myself, a veteran of 26 years, and military personnel. His profound knowledge, shaped by years of collaborating with elite athletes and military professionals, focuses on optimizing physiological and cognitive potential, particularly concerning wellness and longevity strategies for our esteemed veterans. Now, if you are familiar with the theme of my podcast, and if you've read my book, titled Elevate Your Leadership, you'll know that part 2 of my book is dedicated to health and wellness. As somebody who served for 26 years and have gone through many injuries and recoveries, I'm always looking for the right combination of fitness, of mental health and wellness, and of supplements to keep me on top of my game. And as somebody who's 58 years old, I'm currently going through a period of struggle with lower back issues. So this is going to be a fascinating discussion because I'm seeking a solution, and I'm hoping that Dustin can help me out and point me in the right direction. Once again, folks, this podcast is brought to you by IFly Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving. At IFly Virginia Beach, we bring people together through the dream of flight. Visit our website to learn about our flight offerings, to include individual events, group events, corporate events, to include team building, leadership development, and anything else you can imagine when you're weightless. Okay, Dustin Baker, welcome to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast.
Thanks, Bob. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to chat with you. And side note, my grandparents took me indoor skydiving in Tennessee when I was a teenager, and it was phenomenal. It was the smile on your face is like when you're doing it is just plastered. It's just I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
There is a truthful testimonial right there because I see it every day. You know, we have about 30,000 people come through our facility every year, and that smile that you mentioned, that is what we see every single time, and it's incredible. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So thanks for the mention there. So Dustin, I want to get people to know a little bit about who you are and how you came to be the president of BioProtein technology. And I'm a firm believer that the seeds of our leadership, the seeds of our character, the seeds of our personality were planted in our youth. And sometimes we go through aha moments, spiritual change, or something else that really helps us pick a direction. But I really think that where we grew up and how we grew up has a lot to do with how we became who we are. So please tell us where you're from and where you grew up.
Yeah, I grew up in Tampa, Florida. I'm actually back in Tampa now. Our entire operation is here in Tampa. I grew up in a single parent household. It was me, my brother, my sister, my mother was at work, and my grandma kind of basically raised us. And I think that's important for, our whole origin story whenever we do these types of things and we're talking about, because I agree with you 1,000,000%. Your adult life is absolutely, of course, it's clearly a product of how you grew up and those things that were instilled in you. In our life, and when I was a young kid, it was really about survival. It was, my mom was concerned with do we have enough gas to get you to school tomorrow? And do I have enough gas to get to work? It wasn't necessarily about, having a proper nutrition plan or how many workouts we're going to get in or any of those health things. We were a family of survival. In fact, my sister was extremely special needs. She had a very rare chromosome disorder where I spent my life in and out of hospitals. I mean, that was a very normal thing. I think, I can't even literally legitimately count how many times I've been in an ICU or an emergency room or just the hospital was where we kind of lived. That was just part of it. So, that was my experience growing up. And I tell those things because that led to who I was as an adult. I had very little, and to make a specific point, it wasn't my mother's fault, it wasn't my grandmother's fault, right? The nutrition education or the health and wellness education in this country is very low. It's extremely low. In fact, it's compounded over years. If you look at children and obesity rates, it's honestly the word I like to use is obscene because it is.
Completely
And
agree.
the reason,
Completely
yeah.
agree. 70% of chronic disease in America is 100% preventable, and it's caused by poor dietary choices. But please continue.
Yeah, you're looking at diabetes in kids, man. And like this is like it's absolute insanity. And I have no problem saying that. If you go to an elementary school or you watch, kids come out and stuff, it's like you didn't see that and you didn't see these overweight kids before. Now, I was an overweight kid, but I'm making a point here is like it's a very different world. But anyway, so the education doesn't exist. And for, single parents or parents with zero education regarding nutrition, et cetera. I mean, I think it's a compounding issue. So anyway, that brought me into my, high school years and my
Were you athletic in high
20s.
school? Did you play sports?
I played sports as a elementary kid. I played hockey. I loved hockey. I was very good, but hockey in Florida is very expensive. And my mother did everything she could, but I couldn't continue to play hockey. So I started to play soccer and baseball. It's a very normal thing here. We play baseball all year round. But frankly, as I was going into my teen years, I was extremely overweight. So much so that when I did go see my father, I saw him a couple times a year, maybe once or twice. I got off a plane and I was so overweight, he didn't recognize me.
Wow. And where did your father live? Where did you go to?
He lives in Michigan.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So I would go back and forth to Michigan and stuff. And, he's not a bad guy. He had another wife and some, another family and stuff like that. And I grew up separate and it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, that would then play another potential or a large part of my life of, having lack of male role models, basically zero, which would lead me to.
That's interesting because I grew up, my father died when I was 4 years old. And, at the time you don't realize you're growing up without a father, so to speak. But then when you hit adulthood, it dawns on you over time. And then when you become a father yourself, it really, then you really think, wow, I really missed out. But that's interesting. Did you have any jobs in high school?
Oh man, I had a lot. I couldn't wait to get a job. So the first job I had was at a grocery store here in Florida called Winn-Dixie. I was 12 and I walked in, and that was one thing that I did learn early. My mother was a hard worker. Okay. She worked as many hours as she could, as much as she possibly could. She went out of her way to send us to, private schools, and they did whatever they could to make it happen.
So work ethic was instilled at a very young age.
I believe so. It wasn't really like super taught, I don't think, like verbally, but we can get into this later. I'm a man of action, not of words. And I think that it was inherently built within me you would see DNA. That, right? You would see my mom leave, she'd take us to school, and then you'd see her when she came home. And I would go to the office with her, et cetera, et cetera. And they, I could see, but anyway, so yes, I worked at Winn-Dixie. I had bag groceries. I walked in and I really wanted a job. I wanted cash, and I walked in, they weren't hiring. And I asked for the manager. I went and he sat down with me and I told him why I wanted a job, and they weren't hiring, but they hired me. And I bagged groceries. I worked 2 days a week. I worked Saturday and Sunday. I walked groceries to people's car, and it actually wasn't that bad of a job.
That's cool.
I think it paid $5.12 or something like that an hour. And I had money to spend with, my buddies if I, got to go do anything. So yeah.
And you're getting a little movement walking to and from those cars, right?
Yeah, why not? But yeah, and that actually, now that you say that, I never put two and two together, but that mentality of just walking in and getting what I wanted, I use that for the rest of my life. I still do. That's literally for all of our manufacturing and stuff like that. I like to choose places because we don't make paper, right? So paper products, boxes, et cetera, glass. We don't blow glass, but I like to be able to have it in a space where I can walk in, I can get what I want. I know what's going on. So I walk in places. I have no problem doing that and, figuring that out. So,
Cool. Okay. So high school,
yeah,
you had a
high
couple
school, I
jobs through high
didn't,
school.
yeah, I had jobs for high school. High school, I also didn't really play sports. I went to an all boys school that is very well known for their athletics. And they send kids to the leagues right out of high school. I mean, it's a very high level, and I was not even nearly close to it. So I did not have the talent to play where I was. So no, I was not a high school athlete whatsoever. In high school, I worked. What was my next job? I know I worked when I was 14. I started at my mom's law firm. My mom was a secretary for a real estate land usage development attorney. And I started working there, and I was an office clerk and would do close files. So before
For the listeners at home, he put clerk in air quotes.
Yeah, sorry, I just can't remember if you want to see. If I was
No, that's
office
cool.
clerk.
Well, I'm
So
doing both. Yeah.
I grabbed lunches. I did that a lot. I actually really enjoyed that, but I ran around, grabbed lunches for attorneys. And then back then, this is before, no, computers existed, but there wasn't the cloud, right? There wasn't, storage space on hard drives was actually, limited. It wasn't
What year are we
unlimited
talking
storage.
about?
We are talking about 2002, 2001,
Okay.
2002, 2003.
Uh-huh.
So I went to high school. 2000 to 2001 was my freshman year. I believe I started then. So I would say
Okay.
2002 because I was saving up to buy a Ford Mustang. I had to have a yellow Ford Mustang, and I had to earn it, right? I had to make the cash. So that was my car. I don't know why, but I loved it. And so back then, okay, close files. This was when you could make a ton of cash, and there was these companies that would, like Iron Mountain or some of these other offsite storage. So you used to have companies, and they were big business, where law firms, insurance companies, anything, they have all these physical files. So you have literally physical paper. I know it's hard for people to imagine, but physical paper and boxes and boxes and boxes, and you can only store them so much in your office space because we are on the 22nd floor of a high-rise building.
Yeah.
So you would enter them into a database of what was actually in the box. You would number them, categorize them, give them call signs, and then you would ship them off. You'd label them and ship them off. So then I did that, and I actually created, and I had no idea I was doing it at the time, but I created an entire system for their closed file system of shortcut, all this fun stuff and shortcuts. And as a 14-year-old, I was I think the only one who actually knew how to use the Microsoft software that anybody in the whole place.
That's cool.
So yeah, so I did that for a couple years, and I would work so fast and do so much. They were so blown away. I could basically work for an hour or two a day, and then I would this is what it is, but I would go hide, and I would go look at cars and stuff. But I would, I did more work than anybody else was doing. So, work smarter, not harder. So, I did that.
Cool.
And then in high school, when I was 17, I took off and left home to go live with my dad because I wanted that, father-son connection that we didn't have. And I moved to Michigan at 17, right before I was 18, something like that. And I worked at McDonald's for I had car insurance. So at that time I had a car, I had to pay car insurance. So I would, take a job. I worked at McDonald's for maybe 3 weeks, something like that. And then I worked at Subway for 3 months. And then I, just basic jobs. And then I worked in a warehouse. Selling that shipping and selling pool tables and bars and above ground swimming pools and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what happened after high school then? What did you go to college? What was next?
Yeah, I paid for college. I didn't really go that much. So back to how I grew up. Like I said, I had very unhealthy habits. And by this time, I was 17, 18 years old. I was smoking, I was drinking.
Yeah.
I barely graduated high school. I hated high school. I couldn't stand it. I'm a good test taker, but I figured out mathematically that I could graduate and do everything I could if I just passed a certain level of the test. So I would eat all of the homework, all of the extra projects, anything like that. I knew that I could mathematically beat the system and never do any of that work all year long if I could slam the test. And that's what I did. And I did that through high school. I did it through college. So I did a couple of years in college, and then the drinking, the partying and stuff gets the best of you. And I stopped going.
Wow. So what school was that, by the way?
Oh man, Grand Rapids Community College.
Okay. So you stopped going to college. What happens after that? You go look for a job at the factory?
No, I'm not a factory guy, Bob. I'm more of I like to use my other talents. I like to talk, and I'm an idea man. So
Okay.
I got into the the industry that I found I could make the fastest amount of cash that I enjoyed at the time was hospitality. So I got into the bar business, and I was a server and a bartender and a bar back and all kinds of fun stuff. And I did that for years, which was absolutely not conducive to a healthy
For sure. Yeah.
lifestyle, and
Yeah.
compounded in and of itself. And then you add all kinds of stuff. So I was a 20 something college dropout who was in the party scene and hanging out with all kinds of let's just say unsavory characters.
Sure.
And I didn't work out, I didn't do anything. I drank, I smoked cigs, and I bartended all night
Yeah.
thinking I
Yeah.
was cool.
And just ate whatever. There, no,
Yeah,
no.
I mean, at this time I had gotten really skinny. I grew quite a bit vertically,
Okay.
so I got really
Okay.
skinny. But man, I was a string bean. I was a very skinny. I went from this super fat kid, short. I mean, dude, I'm talking I think I was like 215, 220, 5'3". In fact, it was a
Holy
joke.
cow.
I think my driver's license still says 5'3" on it. So
Oh
yeah.
man. How tall
And
are you
so
now?
I'm 6 foot.
Okay. Holy cow. Wow.
So I shot up during later in high school and got real skinny. But all those unhealthy habits never went anywhere. They only compounded. So I
Yeah.
was a 20 something, doing the worst things you could possibly do, smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day, living that lifestyle.
Yeah. General Eisenhower, later President Eisenhower, was known to smoke 4 to 5 packs of cigarettes a day.
Oh
That's
man,
that's
when do you breathe?
yeah. Well, and I did the math on that when I heard it, and that's like 4 cigarettes per hour or something like that. So
Oh man.
basically there's and it takes, I don't know, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to smoke a cigarette. So basically his entire waking time, the guy was
The
puffing.
guy was ripping a cig. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. Yeah, I grew up in a smoking family. My mother's side did not smoke at all. Actually, that's not true. So I was around smoking all the time. My grandfather of my mother's side smoked cigs in the house all the time. My
Yeah.
dad was a big my grandpa was a big smoker. He quit, but my father was a big. I mean, my dad played like minor league football. They were smoking on the sidelines. I mean,
Yeah.
cigs were. My grandma
Yeah.
was smoking cigarettes when my parents were being born. Like I remember
Yeah.
she tells us that
Yeah.
story and stuff like that in the
Yeah.
hospital. So
I grew up in that same environment. I even write
yeah.
about it in my book, because in my book, I in the introduction, I tried to lay out what it was like to grow up in the late 70s and early 80s. And nobody wore seatbelts. Everybody smoked. Shopping malls were becoming all the rage and all that stuff. But my high school had a smoking section or a smoking area. So that's how prevalent it was. But boy, it's a different world now. So speaking of the different world, so how did you find your way to, BioPro and to what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I had a friend, his name's Mike. He's a firefighter in Big Rapids, Michigan now. And I tell this story all the time. And sometimes I send him the shows. I don't know if he knows the kind of impact that he had, but I like to give him and credit to people when it's due. Anyway, Mike was a friend of mine who was really big into fitness, really big into health. And one day he was just like, "Hey man, why don't you just like cut that stuff out? Why don't you come to the gym with me?" And that literally was this turning point of honestly, my entire life. You can kind of boil it all the way down to that little moment, because for some reason that really clicked with me. And we did that first workout. It was like a chest, like run workout, whatever, dude. It was just in the basement of somebody's house, and a bench press and some stuff like that. But what that did was, I don't know what it was. And I think it was just, I had no purpose. I had nothing I was grasping onto. I had nobody believing in me. I had nobody giving me anything. I had nowhere to go, nothing to do. My life was completely bleak. It had no purpose.
Yeah.
And that little thing, it just compounds, right? And I found like, okay, cool. This is something that I enjoyed doing. I really liked it. It was off of my like quote unquote working hours. Actually, I think I was unemployed at that time, but
Okay.
yeah, because I couldn't keep a job back then either.
Yeah.
I was a pretty big problem, Bob.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
Stayed out of jail though, at least from what you said so
I
far.
actually didn't, Bob. I actually did
Okay.
not. Actually, so prior right to that, I got arrested. So I did. I got arrested for driving under the influence.
Okay.
So you're
All right.
wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like
And all
these
this stuff
things
is stacking up, though. All these negative things are
100%.
stacking up, and something in the back of your mind is saying, "Man, I got to do something about this."
Yeah, and it's there. It's your subconscious brain really honestly controls 80% of your life. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
And so, and I believe everyone has an inherent purpose, like they're striving for something. I'm a big man of God, so I believe that I believe that that is inherent of us from our faith to reach out for those things. But I believe he gives us opportunities and gives us the ability to find that purpose um, in something that we're doing in life, right? And that was that thing that this guy gave me, and my friend to this day, it just gave me that. It gave me that purpose. It gave me something to work towards. And as you know, you continued to do it. Fitness is really cool. It's not something you can buy. It's not, well, it's cool to some people. Some people probably don't think this is cool at all, but it's not something you can purchase. It's something that it doesn't matter what class you're in, monetarily or so, in society. It's not something you can buy. It's not something you can just take from someone. It's not something you can pay somebody else to do for you. It's something you have to earn. And I don't actually believe in my entire life I had ever been forced to really have something that I had to earn long term.
Yeah.
And those things compounded.
You just cued something in my brain there. So I heard everything you said in terms of earned but the other thing is, regardless of your socioeconomic status, it's available to everyone. So
1,000,000%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people should realize that you don't need the gym membership, and you don't have to, there's so many ways you can incorporate fitness into your daily life. And for me, I look for change. Routines get boring, and your body doesn't respond as well to certain things, which I'm sure we're going to talk about here. And so I look for change. And for me right now, I'm into body weight. A lot of my exercises are just body weight exercises. So I'm laying off heavy weights for a little while, and just going with some body weight type stuff. Mike, I want to go back to Mike real quick, and then we're going to move on. Mike said to you, "Hey, why don't you come and try and work out?" or whatever his words were. What was the setting? Where were you? What house, what building,
Oh
what
man,
bar?
I think, oh really? I can only assume we were at, well, he lived with a couple roommates. I mean, we were probably 24, 25 at this time.
Oh, wow.
And we were sitting, had to have occurred, and a guy named Phil. I haven't said this guy's name forever. His name was Phil. I won't use last names, but Phil lived. Phil had a house, and then a bunch of the guys lived there, and then Mike had a treadmill, a bench press, and stuff in the basement.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm sure that we were either just hanging out there watching TV or something, or maybe we were drinking or something like that. And he's like, "Hey man, why don't you come out tomorrow? Why don't you come do this or whatever?" Either way, cool. I took him up on it. I got real excited, and back then, I mean, man, I couldn't even pay my cell phone bill. I think I had to ask hey, can I have $40 from my dad or something? I mean, just to pay I had a Boost mobile phone, if you remember those. I mean, it wasn't even a real plan. So to your point, you just have to want. You actually have to want to do it. So you got to come to the realization that, is this something that you want to do, whether it's to actually want to work out or whether it's the end result.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So most of the stuff where the end results are the great part about it, it's not something you're necessarily going to want to do right now.
So knowing what you know now scientifically, that first workout in Mike's basement, was it serotonin and dopamine? I mean, do you think that those chemicals,
of course. I mean, my dopamine precursors at that point were nicotine, alcohol, and I think that was pretty much it. I don't think I was doing really drugs back then, but nicotine and alcohol and food. Yeah, sure. Sugar,
cupcakes and ho-hos.
Yeah. So you have, you have a very specific physiological response when you do things like physical exertion and you work out and stuff like that. You have a secretion of very specific hormones. You have dopamine, you have dopamine, et cetera, which is your happy chemical. Right. So if your whole life is focused around artificially creating that dopamine, then if you're going to do something like working out and stuff, they used to, when you first start working out, you call it like the workout high. Man, I would work out when I first got started. I remember being in the grocery store waiting in line and just being happy to say hi to somebody who was just checking me out of the grocery store, instead of being a complete jerk, which most people, a lot of people are, and they don't talk to me, stay away from me, whatever. I remember just being real happy. I mean, I don't think I'd ever actually been organically happy, to be honest with you, other than when I was a child until that point. And I've never actually said that before. I think you helped me kind of put the pieces together of, you lose a lot of that happiness, from childhood until when you're in early adulthood period. For sure. That is an organic happiness, right?
Because adults beat it out of you is what happens.
Yeah. And honestly,
you can't do that. You can't think that way.
We're all kind of lost a little bit in your 20s, right? That's what we call them 20 somethings. You're trying to find things through college, or you're trying to find your way. And you might not have, toughest times are tough. Most people in college don't have a bunch of money. They don't have a big purpose going on. They're
Right.
probably working for somebody else who could maybe or maybe not be a total jerk. So
Right.
the organic happiness, I believe, is a little bit harder to come by, right?
For
You don't have
sure.
your
And
kids giving it to
yeah.
you either.
And deep down inside, those early 20 somethings especially are like worried about what am I going to make of myself?
Yeah.
Am I going to make anything of myself? So they have those concerns. So you're having those concerns, you have your workout, and then how did you move on from there?
So it just really, I don't know how and why it happened, but it just really grabbed me. And I spent every moment. Now, I was very lucky at the time because I was probably completely unemployed at that point or working very little, maybe 2 days a week. So I had a ton of time on my hands. So I spent all of my time learning everything I could about physical movement, workouts, and nutrition. I mean, all I would do is read, 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 read. Luckily, the internet was, very prevalent at that time. I'm not too old. So
Yeah.
I got a ton of info and I used it and I learned everything I could. And then from that point, I ended up at a gym that, Mike actually took me to, which was a performance athletics gym, which is where I got my first mentor. I got the first actual human being who ever invested any time whatsoever into me, sans, my mother and my grandma. And his name was Joe, and I'll use his last name because you might want to look him up. He's great, but his name is Joe Cebulski. He was an ex-Olympic decathlete. He trained for, I think, Athens and Beijing. He was a decathlete Olympian guy.
Wow. Nice.
And he had a gym that was performance-based, CrossFit, Olympic lifting, stuff like that. And this guy, man, so I worked out at his gym, and at that point I was gainfully employed. I was running a bar, like a steakhouse whiskey bar. I weaseled my way in there and was doing menu creation and serving and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And I was buying a membership from him and working out at his gym. And I lost that job. Got into a fight with my manager about something stupid. And I walked out. So I had no money. And I walked up to Joe and I was like, hey, I'd been working out there for a while and I loved it there. I was there every day, all the time. And I walked up to him. I'd never spoken to him before, I don't believe. And I was just like, hey, Joe, you don't know me, but I work out here and I can't pay you. I don't have a job and I can't afford your membership. Because back then it was still like $180 a month. So, I mean, that's,
man.
So I was like, hey, I can't pay you, but hey, I'm willing to do whatever you need around here to cover the membership until I figure this out. And so I did. I showed up, I took out his garbage, I cleaned his equipment, I cleaned the floors, I fixed bathrooms. And here's what happened is you couldn't get me out of bed before noon, let alone at a job. And this job wasn't paying me anything. And I would be there at 7 a.m.
Nice.
So, and I was, yeah. And the thing about Joe is that he taught me things. Like nobody ever taught me anything. And so what he did was he taught me how to build stuff because he was like an engineering type mind and he would build equipment. I don't know if you're familiar with like assault bikes, right? The air fan bikes. Okay. Those didn't exist back then. Those are only a few years old. Before them, they had Airdynes, and Airdynes were these gold things you can probably still find in your grandparents' basements or great-grandparents' basements.
I remember them.
Okay, so we used Airdynes way before assault bikes. So he would program Airdynes, and little did I know, I was learning how to build these things. We used to weld wheels. The guy taught me how to weld. Like, I mean, this is a guy with, my dad didn't. It is what it is. He didn't teach me really anything. So, like, this guy was teaching me how to weld and build, and like. I mean, I know how to weld.
Now, to be fair, the average father
labor.
doesn't teach their son how to weld, But...
Oh, well, it's a great example, right?
Yeah. It is.
Welding is super cool, and I'm not a manual labor guy. Okay, so these are really cool things. Anyway, the guy taught me all this cool stuff, and so I would just show up without question. And one day he paid me. He gave me like $250 for the month, and I was like, okay, I can make money doing this. And from that point on, I was like, this is going to be my career. I'm going to figure this out. And so I started learning about marketing and gyms and stuff like that. And Joe and I had differences. I still talk to Joe to this day. It was great. We had differences in how I wanted to do business and how he wanted to do business. And I wanted
it was his business.
Oh, 1,000,000%. I was the janitor, dude. Like I was a janitor.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I mean, that was a great job, to be honest with you. And so, I was sleeping with spiders back then in basements. I think I had a mattress, no sheets. I mean, the really good learning years, Bob.
Yeah.
So
love it.
And so I had to figure out another career. And so I came back to Tampa, but I did the same thing. I walked into a guy's gym that I wanted to be at, and I told him I'd do the same thing. And I would, hey, I want a job. I don't know if you're hiring, but I will clean your toilets. I'll fix your equipment. I'll scrub your barbells. And he gave me a shot. And within like maybe 3 months, I was running his gym. And then within 6 months, we'd really done a number in a positive direction with revenues. So much so that he basically never even had to show up anymore. And we built a really great facility that was here in Tampa. And that was another kind of, pin or rung in the ladder of this stuff,
Sure.
which honestly led me to kind of where I am today from my discovery of the basis of the formulas that we use today to
Cool. So
their implementation. Yeah.
So that's the discussion we're going to jump into when we come back from the commercial break. This is fascinating. We're talking to Dustin Baker, president of Biopro Plus. We just heard an incredible story of his upbringing, which is very similar to so many of us, so many of our upbringings. And, we all face challenge. We all face adversity. And, what I heard throughout that whole story, Dustin, is moral and ethical character is something that was demonstrated to you. It's something that was passed on to you. It's something in your DNA. And regardless of bad decision-making early on, you had good moral and ethical character, which led you to the next thing and the next thing. Folks, we're going to take a quick break for capitalism. We will be right back. And we are back. We are talking to Dustin Baker, president of Biopro Plus. And we just heard a fascinating story of his upbringing and how he kind of converted from unhealthy habits to healthy habits to, I would say, almost a fascination is what it sounded like. But also he got into the business aspect of it, his business mind, and really learned the operations of fitness as a business. And so please pick it up from there, Dustin.
Yeah. So at this point I had taken over a facility here in Tampa that we did pretty well. And, during
when
that
you say
process,
taking over, you bought it or you were GM?
No, I was just managing it. You can call me a GM. You can call me a GM. And so I would call myself an operator.
All right, I like that. I like as a former operator, I like that.
Yeah, a real operator. Yeah. So we did that. We built a really great culture there. We had a phenomenal gym. I got into the gym business a few years later. Now looking back on that model, I mean, it was extremely profitable, great model that we had done. And when I was doing that facility, we were in like a warehouse, industrial park, and in the same exact park, there was some labs of this small, I would consider them a regional company, small company here in Tampa of two brothers that were formulating these really cool products and liquid formulations. And I used them. My now business partner had used them back then as well, which is a whole nother story. But anyway, we used them. And as my career progressed, I actually left that facility. I had several individuals who were very interested in my talents and they wanted to partake in them. Right. I had people who wanted to invest in me and they wanted to do something. They saw what I did. They saw how I worked. They got to know me. They wanted to take what I had or what I was doing and make it a larger operation.
In terms of running facilities?
Actually creation of our own concept.
Okay.
So create our own fitness concept, something that was
nice,
scalable, something that had nationwide legs instead of, small
local
town.
Regional. Yeah.
So during that process, I ended up getting picked up by a national franchise called D1 Sports Training. And I did sales and marketing for them and one of their locations here. So they do youth all the way through professional training. Most of them focus on football. They do combine training. Like right now, I'm sure they're jumping into the first week of combine training. So they'll work with agents and prep guys for their pro day to go to the combine, try and get signed by the NFL. Mm-hmm. They also work hand in hand with medical providers. So they'll have a huge sports training facility in tune and attached to like ortho guys, orthopedic surgeons, knees, toes. It was a whole thing, right? They had PT. It was the whole thing. So I managed their facility here. I was more the head of the director of sales and marketing was my title. So I did that. And while I was doing that, I was actually also working with what I would call my business partner, but really realistically an investor, to develop our own concept based on the things that I learned and the methods that I were using to make these other facilities work or make them profitable, build them. So why I say all that is not only is it a part and parcel to my career journey, but every single facet of those businesses, I would inject these formulas that I had found that I was using into the DNA of those facilities, meaning I would use them on athletes. The trainers would use them. The people go to the gym would use them. The owners would use them. I mean, and they worked. They always worked, man. And they consistently.
How did they
worked.
work? What's an example of they work?
So okay, so I actually bought this company in 2018. So when I use the verbiage I'm going to use, it's because several years later I ended up acquiring the company. But the formulas I own about, I would say, over 30 different formulas. Now we focus Biopro Plus is our number one formula. That formula is in over 40 countries. It's on every continent other than Antarctica. We have doctors from here to South of Africa using it and prescribing it. So anyway, those products, they're growth factor products. So they work in the growth hormone science space. So your body has a master hormone called growth hormone. Okay.
Human growth hormone, right? Secreted during sleep?
Well, yes. Well, it's a pulsating hormone. So it secretes all throughout the day. Yes, a predominant amount, about 70-90% is secreted during 2 sleep cycles, SWS and REM sleep, so your deep sleep cycles. But you can actually spur its creation with certain types of workouts, like HIIT workouts and nutrition and stuff like that. It's literally a pulsating hormone, meaning it can be triggered at all different times of the day, depending upon what you're doing to trigger it. Anyway, so that growth hormone is responsible for metabolic function, wound healing, workout recovery, performance, sexual function, energy, cognition, focus. It's the master hormone, where testosterone and estrogen are sex dominant. They have their own special functions, but they actually work synergistically with growth hormone. Anyway, so what we do is we manufacture and create the end result of what the growth hormone does. So the cellular triggers that trigger those functions we just talked about, that's what our product does. And it does it without a needle. It does it without a prescription. It does it without messing with your glandular function, any of that stuff. So anyway, these formulas, this is several years ago, the basis of our formulas now, I would put in this, I would use with the athletes, et cetera, and people love this stuff. I mean, it worked. The thing is it's repeatable, and the results were always the same. So workout recovery, energy, focus. I mean, I remember the head of sales for a very large, it's an NFL team. I mean, a huge organization. He was a ex-collegiate athlete, and he's actually a diabetic by birth, right? So he has blood sugar issues, et cetera. And he just took the stuff. Anyway, I gave it to him, and he didn't even know what it was. And he comes back 2 weeks later and is like, man, I don't know what you gave me, but I've never felt better in my whole life. And it was like these stories and these testimonials are so consistent.
What about for injury recovery? Like,
okay, so 100%. So we see a lot with shoulders, knees, and hips are your top 3 injury recoveries. But yes, the growth factors, which is what our science is, it's growth factors. Growth factors are the end result of human growth hormone after it's converted by the liver. So growth hormone secreted by your pituitary gland, it's sent to your liver. Your liver converts it into what are called growth factors. Growth factors are really cool. They're called protein cytokines. And what they are is they're literally just cellular triggers. That's all that they are. That's all hormones do, is they're a chemical catalyst to create a physical change in the body. It's cells that are the change. That's what you want to change. That's what you want to multiply. You want to differentiate. That is cellular growth. So you have to have a cell signal to trigger that multiplication and differentiation, that growth. That's all a growth factor is. They're protein cytokines. They're complex amino acid chains that trigger the cellular change. So why would you ever take an injection or a hormone replacement if you could just take the protein cytokines that don't negatively impact your hormonal endocrine system? So like, to me, it's like this is brilliant. Like, why doesn't everybody know about this? Which is why after several ventures of mine, I had another mentor that we were kind of glazing over here a little bit, that was with me through my failures as well as some of my successes, and walked me through it. And I had a few guys that were kind of always like, hey, I would like to participate in your next project. And so I had like a list.
Put me on that list, by the way.
Thank you. We're putting a group together about something else, but yeah.
If it's lower back pain, or spinal stuff, I'm on it.
It's kind of like that. So anyway, I called him up and I was like, hey, I'm leaving this venture. This is not working out, and I have an opportunity here. I think we've been doing this. This is brilliant. we need to just do this. We need to get our hands on this. The company was not for sale. These things were not for sale. But where there's a will, there's a way. And that's why I say when I walked into that grocery store at 12 years old,
Love it.
I'll just figure it out. And that's how I've spent my whole life, is just figuring out. I can barely read or write, Bob. Like you figure it out, man. So that's what I did there too. I walked in, I figured out who I needed to talk to, and we had a deal within, I think it was 3 weeks, honestly. We had a contract signed 3 weeks. We had an acquisition on December 1st is when it was inked in 2018. So we acquired the company in 2018. That was 5 years ago. Small regional company. We have improved, every facet of that business there. There was a lot of learning experiences and still a lot of swings and misses, but, like I said, we're international at this point. We have, we've been featured in all kinds of publications. It's all kinds of fun stuff now, right? It's
you're working with the military, is that correct?
Yeah, actually quite a lot. We're quite popular in the special forces branches of the government. A lot of retired guys, and actually the FBI HRT teams, the hostage rescue team, did a blind test on our product with several of their recruits and their guys, and came back with kind of, boom, stamp of approval, stuff like that.
That's pretty cool. That's fun because my son's in college right now, but FBI HRT is his career goal. And,
I can connect him to those guys. I can text him right now, but
that's cool. He's a big boy. And so in terms of military special operations, what can you share there? Are you currently working with them? Is it an ongoing relationship?
So I do not work with the DoD. I do not sell to the DoD. I work with retired guys. I work with different groups.
Okay.
I work with a lot of retired special forces guys.
Okay.
So yeah, it's more of a private type thing. I work some private security stuff out of Australia, but it is not. It is NGO. They're non-government organizations.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. Well, and again, we call ourselves fags, former action guys, right? So
oh man, I can't wait to use that later. I did not know that.
So as a retired special operations guy, I've got a lot of the anomalies, and but I also belong to networks, and I have teammates who are, I'm personally looking at going to either Thailand, Panama City, Panama, or Tijuana or Mexico City for stem cell therapy.
I was about to say, you're trying to tell me about stem cells. We got guys that I'd rather just connect you with some of these guys that do a lot of our athletes. I have nothing invested, nothing to do with them whatsoever.
Well,
but I know that. Yeah,
that's where I wanted to go next with the discussion. So how does BioPro Plus compare? Is it similar?
Well, you're talking about you're talking kind of different things here.
Yeah.
So I have an ethical obstruction when it comes to stem cells.
Okay.
Because it depends where they're coming from, and it depends how they're being harvested. And there's a reason why you probably have to go to South American countries to use them. So you have a lot of so there's two different types of stem cells that are specific to the cause that you're going to use, and then other stem cells that are like amniotic stem cells, which are fetal stem cells, which can adapt to where you are putting them, right? So they don't have a home. Let's just say this, they don't have a home yet, so they can adapt, and they're going to create themselves to basically where you put them. Now, I know that's not technical jargon and stuff like that, but I'm also not a doctor, and I don't want to get too deep into it. But
you got embryonic versus placenta.
Yeah, sorry, not amniotic,
cord.
embryonic. Correct.
Yeah.
So I am. That is not something I'm part and parcel to participate in. So I'm a staunch pro-life guy, and you have to. I'm not interested in harvesting human tissue from fetuses. So that's we don't do anything like that.
What about placenta and umbilical cord?
It depends how it's harvested.
Okay.
So, different, and that's not my specialty, and I don't talk about stuff that isn't. But if it has to do from an ethical point of view, from the prior, it's kind of a big no for me. I don't know enough about placenta or umbilical cord.
And really, I'm asking for personal reasons because
I'm telling you, I don't have.
Yeah, I'm in the struggle of daily pain right now, and. Sure. And I am looking for whatever it takes, short of another surgery. I don't want to have another surgery. So,
listen, I hear you. I've been very lucky that I haven't had any major injuries other than like a broken nose, which is not life changing. So I've been very lucky
at the moment
in
it
that
can
respect.
be.
Oh, dude, I thought I was gonna die, man. My nose got shattered. I took a baseball pitch to the face, sliced up all the tissue in my face into my sinuses. I thought I was choking on my own blood. It was awful. I'd have a nose job and all kinds of stuff. Anywho,
hey, so you grew, so you bought the company, you acquired the company.
Yep.
have you grown the company? You talked about scalability
Oh
early on.
I mean,
so.
Yes, we have grown the company. It's crazy to even see all the countries that, get chipped in and what countries want exclusivity, all kinds of fun stuff. We're launching with a $1 billion organization that I'm sure if I said the 3 letters of the organization, everybody listening would know who they were, that are taking us on. It's been a wild ride the last couple of years. And reason being is, number one, the products work. So it's actually a very easy
That's
sell.
the bottom line right there.
Yeah, they work, right? And so the second thing is that the government's been doing my job for me in respect to growth hormone if you can even get it, okay, you're going to spend 3 to 10 grand a month on prescription human growth hormone replacement, right? So you have hormone replacements. 100% it works.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
why do people go seek those prescriptions?
Because growth hormone, like we just said, it's responsible for you. Why? Because you're in pain and whether it's aging, whether it's pain, a previous injury, whether you are gaining weight you don't like, whether it's, your skin sagging off your face. That's all directly related to growth hormone. And like I was just talking about growth factors. So growth hormone decreases every single year after you finish puberty, period. End of story. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good you eat. Doesn't matter how hard you train. All right. It's going down. Sometimes by 50% by the age 35. So when you wake up 44 years old and you're like, oh man, why don't I feel this way? When I'm looking in the mirror, why don't I see the guy I used to see? Guess what?
I went through that.
Decline.
I went through that big time. Yeah.
100%. So people look for hormone replacement. I live in Florida. Hormone replacement is cash pay. It's on every corner of the street.
Yeah.
You got McDonald's, you got Starbucks, you got a TRT clinic. So, so growth hormone, phenomenal hormone, super huge in the 90s, stuff like that. Either way, it gets a bad name because of like bodybuilders and stuff, and they were absolutely using it, but bodybuilders were dropping dead because they were mixing all kinds of weird stuff with it, right? And your trenbolone, cattle steroids, all kinds of weird stuff. Those things still are very prevalent today. But either way, growth hormone is great. However, the government decided that it was being used off-label, which technically it was. Meaning off-label means the reason why human growth hormone prescriptions were created were to help children with human growth hormone deficiency syndrome, meaning their body doesn't produce growth hormone or is at a small amount where they literally cannot grow, right? They're children. And so this drug was created in the 60s. Well, it was first extracted from human dead bodies, cadavers. Then it was a recombinant DNA. You make a bacteria creates this stuff in a petri dish. You suck it out. You can inject it. All kinds of fun stuff. That was in the late 60s. And the government stepped in and started saying, hey, this is off label. We can't really do this anymore. And so you can still get it. There's plenty of doctors out there that do it. But if in certain states like California, good luck. And if you can, it's 10 grand a month. Florida's a little bit easier, but you're still 1,300, 3,000. So like nobody's taking this stuff. $10,000 a month. I don't care how much money you make. Like that's a big pill to swallow for growth hormone.
For sure. Oh, no doubt.
So yeah.
And insurance probably doesn't cover that for.
No, they don't cover anything. That's all cash pay. So maybe if you're a child and you have an actual syndrome. So the government says no. So then you have the introduction of what are called peptides, which came out several years ago. And what these are is they are synthesized compounds in what's called a compounding pharmacy. And they are glandular stimulators. So they manipulate the gland, the pituitary in your brain to secrete more growth hormone. So think of it like a lemon. You're going to take a drug that's going to squeeze that lemon for more juice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're still manipulating a piece of your brain synthetically with a drug. Okay. So anytime you inject or use a drug, I wish I came up with this term, but it was coined by a physician that I was talking to or worked with. It's selective poison. Okay. A synthetic drug is a poison. It doesn't matter if it's Tylenol. It doesn't matter if it's growth hormone. You're going to incur some sort of side effect, right? Tylenol will suck you have a liquid in your liver that actually filters toxins. Dude, Tylenol will suck that right out of you. More people overdose on Tylenol, I think, than anything else in the country. But anyway, yeah, that's a real thing. So anyway, then you have peptides. Peptides are squeezing that gland to create more. Now in November, the peptide got banned. The FDA banned the 2 growth hormone stimulating peptides, which just basically did our job for us. We already had a pretty easy way to do our job because growth hormone didn't exist and doctors wanted to prescribe it. And with peptides, now they're banned. I mean, it's through the roof. So
just quickly, why did they ban peptides?
So again, they're being used off label. And I would agree with this. So 3 years ago, part of my job is just like I'm talking to you. I got to go to doctors and educate physicians, and
For sure.
I'm a mouthpiece, and I go and explain the same thing I'm doing with you right now. You'd be surprised how many physicians have no idea about this stuff. They don't teach growth hormone anymore because it's been basically highly regulated. No one prescribes it, so you only learn about so much.
Wow.
So I go and do this for a living, and we go around and because most of a large part of our customer base is physicians. It always has been. So physicians buy our products and then they sell them to their patients, cash pay. So anyway, the peptides were banned because they're being prescribed off label. They were used and created. They do work for a lot of people. For everybody, no, but for a lot of people, yes. They were created as a different alternative because growth hormone is highly regulated to give to patients coming out of surgery to heal. Now, they're only supposed to be prescribed for 3 weeks. So like, it's not a long-term thing. There's no science or data to show long-term, whatever. And so when you start to do things that the drug's not supposed to be done for, and the FDA can get mad and they go, hey, you can't do this. And it doesn't matter how much you cry about it. It's over. And that's what they did. November, it's over. And it's been several weeks. People were prescribing this stuff and just taking it for, the entirety of their life and not cycling between the different drugs and not following the protocol. And to the doctors, to have their back a little bit, there wasn't really a super protocol to kind of follow and stuff like this because it was moving really fast and whatever. So anyway, we make the third option. We make a non-synthetic alternative. So we don't fall into the same categories as a lot of these drugs. We're fully 100% FDA compliant. We exceed all, we exceed all standards. However, we don't fall into this pharmaceutical drug category where we're under the same types of rules and regulations. So we're able to go places they can't, but yet we're providing the same benefits.
That also means not FDA approved, right?
Yeah, we're not FDA approved. We don't have to go through an FDA approval. Most, it depends how you look at FDA approvals, but we are not FDA approved. We follow all the rules. We're registered with the FDA. We have our numbers. We do all that kind of fun stuff.
It's just the nature of your product doesn't require FDA approval.
A lot of things don't require FDA approval, to be honest with you. But we're not. Yeah, we don't have an FDA approval.
You're not a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 or whatever.
Correct. Which peptides are now, and it's the whole thing. So basically, in the last few years, with the regulations on growth hormone and now peptide, there's a vacuum that has been created in the market, and it sucked us up.
Nice.
And it's been a wild ride. Luckily, we were prepared for it. We had already been growing the business either way, and we had been seeing some exceptional success. And so when these things happened, it was just kind of like, I don't know the best metaphor to use because we were snowballing, but whatever would make a snowball go faster. I don't know. But
steeper incline.
Give me a steeper incline.
That's a good question. Yeah, steeper incline. There you go. I like that. I like that. Okay, I know that you've got to move on. I just want to hit a couple other things real quick.
Yeah.
So how many people kind of go into the business side of the operation? How many people in the operation overall, including, your researchers, your scientists, your people who create the capsule, your packaging people? How many people in the operation?
That are included in everything from, oh man, I don't even know. I gotta be honest with you.
I mean, 50, 100, 1,000.
No, not 1,000. We're a small company. And frankly, most of those facets I don't own personally, right?
You outsource all that.
Yeah, correct. They outsource. I outsource everything. So, everybody that's included in the operation, I'm comfortable to say over 50.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, but it's not really that large. No, there's not 1,000 people. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Okay. So 50 people. So you're the president of a company with roughly 50 people, 50.
No, not even actually. So it is, my actual company is, 5 of us.
Okay. Well, that's lean. That's lean and mobile and agile.
MVP, minimum viable product. So what I learned, and I did this the wrong way. I did this absolutely the wrong way several times. Is you overdo it.
Oh
and man,
guilty.
Yeah, I've overdone it a couple times, and in preparation. And I read a really good book. It's called The Lean Startup. It's by Eric Ries.
I read it.
I was just looking right across my bookshelf. I was like, who's the author? And so I learned a lot from that book as well about basically cutting everything away. So I used to have a bunch of salespeople. We used to have offices and and project managers and all this stuff because we've always done everything we can. We all have our own warehouse. We do all of our own fulfillment, all of that stuff. That's all us, everything. And through COVID, a lot of our physicians, I mean, doctors' offices shut down. Okay, so we are a cash pay hand product over to somebody, and if there
Great
isn't
business
a
model, by the way.
yeah, if there isn't a doctor's office that's open that they're going to do this, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So during that time, I early got into I figured out how to get stuff in from China and brought in PPE and masks and stuff like that. So to cover our bills.
Sure.
And because we weren't making any money, not enough, right? So I figured that out because everything was shut down. So I was on the phone, man. I was on the phone. I don't even know these people. I mean, I was literally up all night on the phone. I've been every country every weird country from Africa to Asia. I mean, it was weird. It was a very weird time. But I, motivation. The motivation never really leaves me. I have a fiduciary responsibility to not only my partner but my business and our employees. So
For sure.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
So we figured it out. Did that. We got shut down after I did it for a little bit, but they only let certain people play in those sandboxes.
Yeah, right.
I wasn't one of those people. Yeah, I wasn't one of those people, but I figured it out on a smaller scale. But no, I got websites shut down. People kept my money. I mean, all kinds of, it was wild, man.
Wow.
So, but we figured it out. And during that process, why I say that is we figured out fulfillment. We figured out websites. Like I was getting websites shut down. I was spinning up websites as fast as I could, like trying to do all these things. And with the physicians shutting down, it's like, well, we can't just live our lives waiting for these guys to do stuff like these doctors. We don't know what's going to happen. So I figured out and I built a platform to sell this stuff directly to the patient. Now I included the physicians in that original process and there was an approval process and all this kind of stuff. Since then we've evolved way past that. And now, now we take orders. I mean, like every time a country comes in, it blows my mind, but literally all over the world.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the mother of invention and was a huge change in our process. Now, during that exact same time, I spent about a year doing everything I could to learn about product design and raw materials and different things. And we created what is now called Biopro Plus, which is the product so all of these things, it's like my business partner would use serendipity. You have these serendipity moments where
for sure
you're doing all of these different things and then they kind of come together at the right time and they click. And I completely agree with that, is they click. So anyway, during these times, I figured out how to do everything I was doing and make, to be honest, millions more dollars annually with a couple people. And so that's what we do. Now, I will tell you that only lasts for so long, meaning eventually you grow to a point where you have to start, you outgrow what we call the agency model, which is you're hiring agencies. And that's where we're at right now. So right now our growth is far exceeding our agency model. It's actually been hindering us a bit. So that's right now I hired a guy yesterday. I hired another guy before that. So right now we're in the process of building out those internal infrastructures that I originally got away with.
Yeah. So you're scaling
to actually fund. Yeah. We are in a scale mode right now. I don't know how long the window of, if they're going to come out with other drugs that are going to do the same thing. We'll go through these cycles. I mean, I know the medical industry very well. We'll go through the cycles and it is what it is. But we're in a scale point right now of, continuing what we're doing, but we have to bring everything kind of in-house now.
Yeah. What a great business model. What a great business example though. And I think, at some point down the road, there's a book that I think there's a book in your experience that would be highly beneficial to people who would read it because,
maybe
you have personal struggle and growth. You have professional struggle and growth. You have a pandemic that puts everything at risk, but then you have your ability to endure throughout the whole thing, which is really I think the moral here, or the main point. All right, I have two questions left. First one is, given everything you've experienced, how would you define the word leadership? A quick thought or a definition? What is leadership? Action. One word.
Live by example.
One word definition. I love it.
Yep.
Lead by example.
Live by example. You can tell everybody.
Live by example. Yeah.
100%. I can run my mouth all day, Bob.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. Nobody listens to what you have to say. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a priest, whether you are operating a business. People learn through watching someone live the example. They do not listen because you run your mouth. Period. I don't care whether you're right or wrong. Action is leadership.
Action is leadership. Folks, key takeaway. If you don't remember anything from the entire discussion over the last hour or so, remember that action is leadership. That is so fascinating, Dustin. Last question.
Yep.
What haven't I asked you? What would you like to share with our listeners that I haven't gotten to?
Oh man, what do I like to do for fun?
Whatever, man. Whatever you want to share. Whatever you think is important, you want people to know. Personal, professional, doesn't matter.
I'll do professional. I take these opportunities to do what I just talked about, which is live the example. I'm a big man of faith, and I believe that my entire life changed when I submitted myself to the obedience of God through Christ. And I will tell you that living that lifestyle, living that example, and doing everything I can to not do this, even though I'm doing it right now, but to live that example has made all the difference in my life.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh man, I was a few years ago. It was 2020. It was the end of 2020.
Okay.
My business was actually my business was profitable. I done just fine for myself. I had a good business, but I was, in my 30s. I had a pretty good life, but no matter all of those things, I was still very lost. And I put myself in poor positions, and I did everything I could to run in the opposite direction. And one time I just finally had enough with that lifestyle and the people around me. And it's like my eyes opened, and I begged God to show me he was real. And I asked him to do one specific thing. And if he did, I would change my entire life. And he did that exact same. He did the one thing I asked him very quickly.
Wow.
And I changed my life, and I haven't gone back. This February I'll be sober for 3 years. And I have he sent me the perfect woman. After all this, I mean, my whole life came into place. My business just exploded.
Yeah.
He sent me the perfect woman and the perfect wife. He gave me the most beautiful child I've ever seen in my entire existence. And my whole life I can't believe I didn't do it sooner. And the difference was, and then I'll shut up. But the difference is that, and I grew up I went to an all boys school. I grew up a very strict Catholic. And the difference is that this was the first time when I asked him for something and I prayed that I actually meant it. I actually meant it. It wasn't because I was supposed to do it. It wasn't because this is what we did and I had to be to church on Wednesdays and wear my blazer. And it was because I meant it. And that made all the difference.
Wow. So inspirational. What an inspirational ending to an absolutely fascinating discussion. So Justin, oh no, this is incredible. And, like you said, you could talk forever. I like to say I could talk until tomorrow. And what an absolute fascinating discussion for our listeners. Again, this is available in both audio format and video format. So if you watch the video and you have to take off, you can do audio format in your vehicle, however you want to do that. So Dustin Baker, fascinating discussion. If you are ever anywhere near Virginia Beach, please come and visit me. Visit IFly Virginia Beach. You said you flew in, I think, Tennessee many years ago. That's kind of, it's wonderful. It's evolution, right? That was kind of like Fred Flintstone's car. And my facility in Virginia Beach is kind of like George Jetson's car. So we'd love to have you
very cool.
here. So thanks a lot for being here, Dustin, and have a great day.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. To contact Bob directly or to learn more about how Bob can advance you and your organization through leadership training, team building, executive coaching, and public speaking, visit robertpizzini.com. Robert, Pizzini.com, and connect with him on LinkedIn.